The receptionist didn't look up at first. Her nails clicked quietly against her phone screen, long red tips tapping with careless rhythm. The lobby smelled faintly of citrus and fresh carpet glue. New, polished, a place that didn't expect walk-ins. He stood patiently. Jeans clean but plain. A dark button-down shirt. Nothing fancy. No briefcase. Just a folder tucked under one arm, and a badge clipped to his belt that had been printed downstairs by the security desk. Finally, she looked up. "Deliveries go through the back," she said, already glancing down again. He hesitated. "I'm here for a meeting. 10 o'clock. She raised an eyebrow. "Which department?" "Corporate communications," he said evenly. A pause. Then she stood, smoothing her blazer. "You sure? They don't take meetings without appointments." "I have one." She glanced at his badge without reading it. "You might want to check with facilities. The service entrance is just around back. They'll know where to send you." He didn't argue, didn't raise his voice, just nodded once and stepped aside. Moving toward the hallway, she gestured toward. She never asked his name. The service hallway was narrower, lit by dull fluorescence. Concrete floor. Utility carts stacked with printer paper and plastic jugs of sanitizer. A janitor passed by with a mop bucket, barely glancing at him. Here, no one asked questions. People just moved. He walked slowly. Checked the time. 9:58 a.m. He wasn't early anymore. At the end of the hall, a freight elevator stood open, humming quietly. He stepped in, pressed 12, and waited. The door creaked shut. The ride was smooth, silent. When it opened again, it wasn't a supply room waiting. Polished wood paneling, framed company awards, frosted glass double doors. A brushed steel sign read executive floor, restricted access. He stepped out. A woman in a pantsuit walked past, gave him a glance, then did a double take. "Can I help you?" she asked, unsure. "I have a 10 o'clock with the communications team," he said, calm, even. She blinked. "You're?" He smiled slightly and nodded. "Right on time." She hesitated, then slowly opened the door to the boardroom. Inside, a long table stretched across the room. People were already seated, executives, managers, senior staff in tailored suits. Coffee cups, laptops open. Chatter paused as he entered. The moderator stood. "Ladies and gentlemen," she said, "this is Jordan Miles, our keynote speaker for this year's Ethics and Equity Summit." Silence. Then the shuffle of surprise. At the receptionist desk 12 floors down, no one knew what was happening yet. He walked in slowly, not hurried. A few people nodded, unsure if they should stand. Most didn't. One man at the far end of the table adjusted his tie. Another whispered something to the woman beside him. She didn't respond. Jordan set his folder down at the head of the table, right where the CEO usually sat during shareholder briefings. The moderator, still standing beside him, cleared her throat. "Jordan's a consultant from Archer and Lean, specializes in organizational culture, leadership integrity, and internal accountability audits. He's worked with over a dozen Fortune 500 companies, and today he's here for us." Jordan glanced around the room. Some faces were polite, others guarded, a few confused. He recognized one, Mr. Chun from finance, someone he'd briefed 2 weeks ago. Mr. Chun nodded quietly but didn't speak. "I appreciate the warm welcome," Jordan said, voice steady. A few in the room shifted. "I came in through the service hallway," he added. A quiet ripple moved across the table. "Was told to use the back entrance. Not by security. Not by protocol. Just suggested." He didn't say more. Didn't point fingers. Just let the silence do its work. Across the table, the woman from HR closed her laptop slowly. The VP of operations stared at his notes without reading. No one looked toward the door. And 12 floors down, the receptionist still hadn't checked the calendar. Jordan didn't sit. He rested his hands lightly on the back of the chair, watching them. He wasn't angry. He wasn't performative. Just present. Still. "Bias," he said quietly, "rarely announces itself." Someone coughed. "It doesn't always look like slurs or shouting matches," he continued. "Sometimes it's just a glance, a redirection, an assumption. Sometimes it's being told where the right entrance is before anyone asks your name." The moderator looked uneasy now. She hadn't known about the lobby. "Today's summit isn't about blame," Jordan said. "It's about recognition. That word matters, Because you can't address what you won't first name. He moved slowly around the end of the table. I've read your policy documents, your mission statements, your public pledges. They all say the right things. He stopped behind the head of marketing, whose arms were now folded tightly across her chest. But culture isn't built on what you publish. It's built on what happens in rooms like this, when you think no one's watching. Silence again. Not awkward, just long enough to make them sit with it. Jordan leaned gently against the side of the table. I'll talk about strategies, frameworks, measurable outcomes. That's why I'm here. But first, someone needs to go down to the front desk. No one moved. Then, after a long beat, a young intern near the door stood up, hesitant. I'll go. Jordan nodded once. Not with praise, just acknowledgement. And the room shifted again. The intern moved quickly but quietly, the kind of quick that says, I don't want to be seen, but I know I've already been noticed. Jordan watched her go, then turned back to the room. I'm not interested in performative fixes, he said. Not in apologies that sound like PR drafts. I'm here because someone in your leadership thought the mirror needed cleaning. He looked at the man 2 seats down from the head, mid-50s, tailored pinstripes, silver cufflinks. The man avoided his eyes. This is what a mirror looks like. No reply, just more stillness. Jordan opened his folder for the first time. Inside were case notes, metrics, interview transcripts from internal surveys, anonymous staff feedback. None of it comforting. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. You've got strong numbers on revenue, growth, external reputation. But internally, he tapped a page. You've got fractures. Staff who know they're being judged before they speak. Others who've learned it's safer to blend than to be seen. Across the room, someone murmured, that's not fair, but didn't repeat it. Jordan looked up. Fairness isn't measured by whether you mean well. It's measured by what people feel when they walk into your building. 12 floors down, the intern was explaining to the receptionist that the man she turned away was today's keynote speaker. The receptionist went still. Upstairs, in the boardroom, the silence had turned into something else. Reflection. Jordan didn't press the moment. He let it settle, then turned the page. Let me share a few quotes, he said, reading from the feedback notes. These are anonymous, collected from your staff over the last 3 months. A few people shifted again. The kind of movement that says maybe one of those is mine. He read without commentary. I've learned not to speak in meetings unless someone else does first. I've been asked if I got lost in our own building more times than I can count. They say we're a diverse company, but look at who gets invited to lunch. He looked up. No dramatic pause, just the weight of truth left hanging. No names, no departments, just voices. The ones who never make it to rooms like this. The man in pinstripes tapped his pen against his notepad. Fast, then stopped. I'm not here to name villains, Jordan said, but I will name habits, cultures, patterns. He laid the folder flat, both hands resting on either side. You want a company people trust? Then start where trust lives, in the unspoken, in who you interrupt, in who you call articulate like it's a surprise, in who you greet and who you don't. A few people looked away. One woman stared straight at him, jaw tense. And down in the lobby, the receptionist was walking toward the elevator, alone, her hands clenched into fists inside her blazer pockets. The elevator chimed. All eyes didn't turn, but they wanted to. The sound meant something now. A break, a shift, an answer, maybe. The boardroom door opened slowly. The intern stepped in first, quiet and flushed. Behind her, the receptionist entered. She looked different, not in appearance, in presence. The confident indifference she wore earlier had collapsed into something taut and unsteady. Her eyes scanned the room until they landed on Jordan. He nodded once. Neutral, not inviting, not cold, just present. She hesitated, then spoke, barely louder than a whisper. Mr. Miles, I'm sorry. I didn't know. You didn't ask, Jordan said gently. The room stayed silent. Her eyes flickered toward the moderator, then to the executives lining the table. No one moved. No one rescued her from the moment. I thought you were with a courier, she added. I know, Jordan said, still calm. So did the last receptionist. And the one before that. Different companies, different cities. Same moment. Her face flushed deeper. I didn't mean any harm, she said. I know, he said again. But what you meant doesn't undo what it told me. That landed. He turned slightly, looking at the room, not just her now. All of them. That's the conversation we're here to have. The receptionist opened her mouth, thought better of it, and simply nodded. Then she stepped back, slowly easing into an empty chair near the wall. No one clapped. No one cleared their throat. The weight of it all was enough. The receptionist sat quietly. Her blazer bunched awkwardly beneath her, but she didn't adjust it. Her hands stayed clasped in her lap, fingers trembling slightly. She was no longer part of the staff here. Not in that moment. She was part of the lesson. Jordan didn't gloat, didn't linger on her discomfort. He turned another page in the folder. "There's a phrase I heard a lot in your interviews," he said. "Not a big deal." A few heads tilted, puzzled. He looked at the woman from marketing. "Someone tells a joke that lands wrong. Not a big deal." He glanced toward the far end of the table. "Someone gets mistaken for the assistant in their own department. Not a big deal." He paused. "Until it is." There was no sarcasm in his tone, just tired precision. "I've been in dozens of boardrooms like this, and every time I see the same pattern. Denial first, then discomfort, then silence, and if we're lucky, truth." He closed the folder. "You don't fix culture by rearranging who speaks at the town hall once a year. You fix it when the person who walks into your lobby, any lobby, gets treated with the same basic dignity whether they wear a hoodie, a tie, or a badge that says guest." One man exhaled sharply, as if realizing how long he'd been holding his breath. Jordan straightened. "Now, if you're ready, we can begin." The room was finally quiet in the right way. This time, when Jordan sat, no one questioned it. He didn't ask for introductions. He already knew their names, had studied their bios, their departments, even their hiring histories. What mattered now wasn't who they were on paper. It was how they listened. He clicked open his laptop. A simple slide projected on the wall. "Culture is built in the margins." Then he said, "I'm going to walk you through 3 scenarios. Real ones. From your building, your people." No one reached for coffee. "First," he said, "a mid-level black analyst was stopped 5 times in a single quarter by internal security while working late. Each time asked to rescan her badge. No one else on her team was ever stopped." He let it sit. A woman near the back swallowed hard. Her face said she knew who he meant. "Second, a trans employee reported being misgendered in meetings repeatedly, corrected it twice, then stopped speaking up altogether. 6 months later, their performance was rated as withdrawn by a supervisor who never knew why. Now eyes dropped. Third, a candidate from a state school with a stellar portfolio was passed over in favor of someone with less experience but a better cultural fit." He turned to the room. "Cultural fit. You know what that means, don't you?" No one answered, but they did. Jordan didn't scold. He didn't accuse. He just waited, let the recognition surface on its own. Then he said, "The culture isn't broken because of one person's actions. It's broken because of everyone's silence when those actions happen." The receptionist, still in the back, sat motionless. No one looked at her. Jordan didn't switch slides. He didn't need to. The words on the wall were doing enough damage. Culture is built in the margins. Some in the room had stopped taking notes. Others were scribbling faster. "This isn't a shaming exercise," he said, finally breaking the silence. "It's a wake-up one." A man in IT raised his hand cautiously. "What if we just didn't know?" he asked. Jordan nodded slowly. "That's the most common answer I hear. And the most dangerous." He let the words settle. "Not knowing isn't the issue," he added. "Choosing not to see is." The woman from HR looked up. "What do we do differently?" Jordan looked at her, then to the others. "You start by noticing who gets interrupted, who gets overlooked, who never gets invited out after work." He leaned forward, voice quiet but firm. "You stop expecting people to prove they belong here. You start proving your space is one they'd want to belong to." Across the table, a young Asian man shifted in his seat. His expression said more than his silence. Finally, Jordan scanned the room. "We're going to break this down, step by step, not performatively, practically. But before we go there," he paused, "I want every person in this room to write down one time, just one, when you saw something that didn't sit right and stayed quiet." Pens didn't move at first, then slowly they did, some with hesitation, some with relief, and in the back of the room, The receptionist wrote something too. Jordan waited, not impatiently, just long enough to let the weight of the task settle. The scratching of pens on paper was the only sound in the room. No keyboards, no clicks, just reflection finally made visible. He stood, walked slowly behind the chairs, not peering at papers, just passing through the room like a quiet audit. "These don't leave the room," he said. "They're not for HR, not for compliance, just for you. But I ask you to be honest, because pretending to never notice is the first lie people learn to survive here." Someone coughed. No one laughed. A woman with streaks of gray in her hair shifted her paper to hide what she'd written. Jordan noticed, didn't call it out. He returned to the front of the room. "Now," he said, "I want one person, just one, to read theirs aloud." No one moved. Then the young intern who had gone to get the receptionist earlier raised her hand. "I will." She unfolded her paper. Her voice trembled but didn't break. "I heard someone call our temp urban in a meeting. Everyone laughed. I did too. But it didn't feel right. I didn't say anything." Silence. Then a few quiet nods. Jordan nodded once. "Thank you." He didn't ask for another volunteer. "That's how it starts," he said. Not with outrage. With someone finally saying, "I saw it, and I didn't act." And slowly, around the room you could feel the edges soften. Not fixed. Not yet. But cracked open. Jordan didn't press for more confessions. He didn't need to. The energy had changed. The room wasn't defensive anymore, it was exposed. And once something is seen clearly, it can't be unseen. He moved to the screen and finally advanced the slide. "Accountability is not punishment. It's ownership. Here's what's going to happen next," he said. "You're going to identify 3 practices in your teams that make people feel small, silenced, or invisible. Not policies. Practices. The little things." He paused, made eye contact with 3 people near the front. "Then you're going to name 3 ways to fix them. And I'm not talking about diversity posters in the break room. I mean behavior." The woman from HR raised her hand again. "What if we get it wrong?" "You will," Jordan said. "Everyone does. The point isn't perfection. It's presence." He turned toward the receptionist in the back. "And the people who most need to see this effort already know what right feels like, even if they rarely feel it here." She blinked, caught off guard. Not embarrassed, just recognized. "Your culture isn't built by big speeches," Jordan added. "It's built when someone like her," he nodded toward the receptionist, "isn't made to feel like she needs a title to matter." No one clapped. No one shifted. But the air in the room? It had changed. Jordan handed out index cards. No logos, no branding. Just space. 1 card per person, he said. "Write a new sentence you want someone to think when they see you in this building." The room went quiet again. This wasn't about fixing policy now. It was about self-awareness. Image. Assumptions. The older man in pinstripes wrote slowly, his hand shaking just slightly. The intern stared at her blank card for nearly a minute before scribbling something quickly and flipping it over, face down. The woman from HR hesitated, then wrote, "She listens, even when no one's watching." Jordan moved around the room, picking up the cards, reading some, folding others. Then he placed a handful on the table at the front, face up. "He belongs here. She's not the assistant. She's the architect. They're not a risk. They're a perspective. I see him, fully." "This," Jordan said quietly, "is the start of your new reputation. Not public, personal. The kind of story people tell about you when you leave the room." He nodded slowly. "It starts here, and it starts today." At the far end of the room, the receptionist's face had softened. Not in relief, but in recognition. They finally saw the room she'd been standing in all along. Jordan didn't end with applause. He didn't ask them to promise change. He didn't hand out action plans with colorful graphs or launch a new initiative with a catchy title. He just stopped talking. The silence felt earned. People began shifting in their seats, slower than usual. There was no rush to be the first out the door. The moderator stood, clearing her throat. "Thank you, Mr. Miles," she said softly. But even her tone was different, less scripted, more real. Jordan nodded. "You'll forget most of what I said by next week. Maybe even by tomorrow." That got a small chuckle from someone near the front. Quiet, but real. "But you won't forget what it felt like to be still, to be seen, or to be unsure of what to say." He gathered his folder, laptop, and cards. "Hold on to that feeling. It's your new start button. He stepped back from the table, giving the room one last glance. The intern smiled at him as he passed. The man in pinstripes stood and, without a word, offered a nod of respect. A real one this time. Jordan walked toward the door. The receptionist stood too. Their eyes met, not in confrontation, in understanding. She didn't apologize again. She didn't need to. Jordan stepped into the hallway. No entourage, no handshakes, just the sound of a closing door behind him and the faint hum of office lights. The receptionist followed a few steps behind, not rushing, just walking. At the elevator, she spoke. "Thank you for not." He stopped her with a glance. Not unkind, just quiet. "I wasn't here for you," he said. "I was here for the room." She nodded. "Still," she murmured, "you could have embarrassed me." He raised an eyebrow. "I didn't have to." The elevator arrived. He stepped in, then turned. "I wasn't supposed to be impressive today," he said. "I was supposed to be mistaken." She blinked, caught off guard. He gave a small smile. That part worked. The doors slid closed. Downstairs, the same lobby he walked through hours earlier looked the same. Polished tile, high ceilings, glass and light. But the receptionist desk was empty now. And maybe tomorrow it won't be the same at all. Because the room had been rewritten. Not loudly, just unmistakably.